Hello and dobry den, and welcome to the beautiful city of Prague, where I'm about to get on a funicular railway and go up a hill. Because if we've learned anything about the Czech Republic on this channel, it's that you can find some incredible things on top of hills in this country. And between 1926 and 1938, on top of this hill in Prague, the Czechs built, quite simply, the largest sports stadium ever constructed. It was originally built for mass gymnastics, and the performance area alone is the same size as 9 football pitches, which means each of the 4 main stands is 3 times the length of the ones you would find at a football stadium. Which means when this place was full, it could hold 240,000 people. That's a casual 100,000 more than any current stadium. And even when you include historic records from before the discovery of safety, it remains the all-time winner. But how exactly did 1930s Czechoslovakia end up building a stadium this big for some kind of gymnastics? Because despite what many people seem to think, the answer is not communism. This is the forgotten story of the legendary Great Strahov Stadium. So this is Petrin Station at the top of the funicular. And most people come up here to see the Petrin Gardens, the Stefanik Observatory, or the beautiful Strahov Monastery. But of course, we're not here to see any of that.
I think I can see an abandoned stadium.
We're here to see the abandoned Great Strahov Stadium. Or at least semi-abandoned. It's a bit complicated. You'll see what I mean when we get inside.
Right, how do we legally break into it? Public entrance that way. Is that where we went? 200 metres and then up the stairs?
Well, if you look at that picture there...
Am I looking at the wrong one?
Public entrance on the far side, the opposite way to where we are.
Oh, okay.
Big red thing saying you're here, and we want to go around the other way.
Have a little look in here. You can sort of see the size of it from here. Although it would be better if we can get up into the stands. There is a piano.
Half a piano.
Right, well,
Can you play it?
we can do some live music. No, it isn't working. It's not working.
Well, that was nothing but a huge disappointment, but never mind, because we've now found an entrance into the stadium. This staircase led us up onto the vast concourse underneath the old South Stand, which now seems to be in use as some kind of exhibition space. There was absolutely no one here to tell us about the exhibits, but on the plus side, that meant there was also no one here to tell us we couldn't go off and explore the rest of the stadium.
Right. Can't actually get out that end, so I guess we're going all the way back.
The entrances to this stand all seem to be fenced off, but back in the corner where we came in, we'd already spotted another staircase that was open, and this one takes you up into the stadium bowl itself.
Big old place, isn't it?
It's got some size.
Got a bit of largeness in its locker.
Alright, let me explain a little bit about what we're looking at here. As you may have spotted, the vast old playing area, which used to be covered in nothing but sand, is now covered with football pitches. And that's because after the stadium fell into disuse about 20 years ago, one of the big local football teams, Sparta Prague, bought up the vacant land and turned it into a shiny new training centre for their youth teams.
When I came here in 2001,
Yeah.
the whole thing was abandoned. So there was no pitches or anything, it was just concrete basically.
What's the capacity of this if they fully utilised it as a stadium?
So it was over 200,000. There were standing parts, so it's a bit vague. You can say 220,000, 240,000 maybe even.
So, in relation to a Premier League stadium, that's 3 Old Traffords.
Yeah. It does show you how large the place is, that there's a football match going on in that corner of the stadium. And there are some people watching it. So maybe we'll head over that way and find out what it is.
And while we're making our way over there, maybe now's a good time to talk about the story of how this monster stadium ever got built in the first place. Because, to be fair, You can see why people assume that it's some kind of communist-era relic. But the Strahov was built in the 20s and 30s, a good 10 years before the communist era starts. And the people who actually built it were a Czech exercise club called Sokol, who were, if anything, anti-communist. But hang on a second. How do you go from an exercise club to building the largest stadium in the world? Well, Sokol literally begins with just two lads called Friedrich and Heinrich, except they're worried about sounding too German, so they call themselves Miroslav and Jindřich. Jindřich, what do you think about starting an exercise club? Okay, what kind of exercise club? Well, firstly, I think membership should be open to everyone, whatever their age or their social class. Okay. And then, and this is the good bit, we will train not only their bodies, but also their minds. I think people should be more proud of their Czech identities, so we will teach them Czech values and Czech patriotism. Okay, I think this is a great idea, but what do you think we should call this club? We will call it Sokol. Was? Sokol. It is a Czech word that means falcon or something like this. Ah, okay, sorry, I don't really speak Czech. So that's how Sokol was founded, and within a decade, it was already huge. There were Sokol clubs spreading all over what was then still Austro-Hungary, plus a few outposts in France, Italy and the Netherlands, and they'd even started springing up in the United States, which gave Miroslav another idea. Jindřich, what do you think about organizing a big event where we are inviting every Sokol club in the world to come together for one gigantic gymnastic gathering? I think that is also a great idea. Have you got a name for this as well? Yeah, I was thinking of calling it Slet. Was? Slet. S-L-E-T. Oh, thank God, I was about to report this video for inappropriate language. And long story short, these events also became huge. Here's a photo of the 1920 Slet, held at Sokol's old Letná Stadium, which had capacity for 120,000, but that just wasn't big enough. And so in 1926, Sokol built the Great Strahov.
We're now going to try and go in the actual official entrance.
The public entrance.
Mm-hmm.
To start with, the stadium only held 135,000, using rudimentary wooden stands and grassy banks. But it was expanded to 180,000 in 1934, and then finally 240,000-ish for the special 10th Slet in 1938. So what you see today mostly dates from the 1930s.
We've got a view of the Strahov.
Yep. Got food, got drink, got football.
We've sort of got food. We've got the last sausage that they had. So we think this is Sparta Prague. Under 18s maybe?
They're under 15, I'd say.
I can't tell from here, I'm short-sighted.
Well, one thing's clear even to me. The events that were held here in the 1930s would have looked very different. In those days, quite apart from the 200,000 spectators filling the stands, there could easily be another few thousand people out on the field, competing in athletics or performing enormous displays of synchronized gymnastics. I think you get the idea. These Sokol events were absolutely massive. Which kind of begs the question, what happened to them? Well, this is the bit where communism comes in. In summer 1948, Sokol held their 11th Slet, which was billed as a celebration of Czechoslovakia's 1945 liberation from the Nazis, but soon turned into a mass protest against the Communist Party, who'd seized power in Prague a few months earlier. And as you can imagine, this did not go down well with the new government. So from then on, the Communist Party cancelled the Slets and replaced them with what they called Spartakiada, which was basically the same thing, but more communist. And these Spartakiada events continued to attract huge crowds to the Strahov, partly because attendance was encouraged by the government, who apparently used to bring in special shipments of bananas and other exotic foods that weren't normally freely available. And so the events continued to be held roughly once every 5 years, right up until the fall of communism in 1989. The planned 1990 Spartakiada still went ahead, but it was drastically scaled down, moved into the much smaller stadium next door, and given a hasty rebrand as the Prague Physical Education Festival. And obviously no one went to that, because over at the Strahov, the Rolling Stones were playing the first major rock concert ever held in the country. Over 100,000 Czech rock fans flooded into the stadium to finally legally enjoy songs they'd been secretly bootlegging for the last 20 years. It was a hugely symbolic moment, and it must have been a heck of a gig. And of course, in theory, now they were no longer banned by the government, the Sokol Society could finally return in triumph to the stadium that they built, which they did in 1994 for the much delayed 12th Slet. But, disappointingly for them, only 25,000 people turned up. And who knows why there were so many empty seats. I guess the world was simply a different place now. Maybe everyone had gone to a rock concert instead. Maybe they were just sitting at home eating free market capitalist bananas. But one thing was obvious: Sokol were never going to fill the stadium again. And in the end, 1994 was the last time the Great Strahov ever hosted a Sokol Slet. And you basically know the rest of the story. By the early 2000s, after a few more years of hosting rock concerts, the stadium was no longer really usable, and there was serious talk of knocking the whole thing down. But then, well, Sparta Prague came along and decided the old playing field would be a great spot to build their new youth academy, and then the stadium itself got listed as a National Cultural Monument. So, while it no longer officially counts as the world's largest stadium, because only parts of it are still open, fundamentally, the whole structure is still here, and no one has ever built anything bigger. So there you go, pub quiz fans. The football team who play in the biggest stadium in the world is not Barcelona, Real Madrid, or even the Michigan Wolverines. Technically, it is Sparta Prague under-15s. Technically. And if you'd like to visit the Great Strahov Stadium, it is an easy 10-minute walk from the top of the funicular. And if the gates are open, then entrance is free. But be aware, the gates might not be open when you go, and there isn't any step-free access, at least not to the upper levels. Meanwhile, if you'd like to go to a slet, the Sokol Society still exists, and they still organise events, they just use smaller venues these days. I'll put a link to their website in the description below. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.